Aloha, pals. With no further ado, I guess actually, with no ado at all, here is Being in the Way, Part 12. It's called You Gotta Serve Somebody. Subtitle, Sovereignty and the Human Ego. Here's Jesus, Matthew 6. He says, "No one can serve two masters. You will instinctively prefer one to the other. Given time, you may grow to love one and to despise the other. Either way, you will fragment yourself. You can't serve both God and money." To my great surprise, the entire opening remarks of the Sermon on the Mount, everything that we've looked at up to this point, has really just been about this one thing. And that one thing, coincidentally, is just the truth that there's just this one thing happening. The whole teaching is centered around union or oneness, an unfragmented life, participating in the wholeness of God. Like the Shema, the great Hebrew prayer, says, "Hear, O Israel, listen. The Lord is one." It's just this one thing. So love the Lord with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength. So you be one as God is one. And the Sermon on the Mount just keeps talking about oneness. Now, this came as a surprise to me because this is, I've been Christianing for most of my life. And so this has got to be the 6th or 7th time I've heard a teaching series on the Sermon on the Mount. I mean, this is the 2nd time that I've helped create such a series. More than this being a set of teachings on morality, on like how to live a proper life, or how to get into the afterlife alive, or any other variety of things that, at least in my experience, have generally been the emphasis. Jesus is just talking about sort of gathering up the fragmented aspects of the human person and bringing it all together so that we can experience this oneness, so that we may be one as He and the Father are one. Christ in us, us and God, one thing. So he begins with some rather abstract renderings of this concept. He says, if the eye is healthy, then the whole body will be filled with life, but will be filled with light. But if the eye is unhealthy, then the whole body will be filled with darkness. And if the light within you is darkness, how deep is that darkness indeed? And that word that's translated as healthy, if the eye is healthy, can also be translated as single or one or undivided. And it's this picture of a person becoming transparent. It's like the message is, if your perception is undivided, then light can enter without being bent around all these like hidden agendas and divided loyalties, without being like kept out of that one room over here that's labeled "Do Not Enter," where we keep the shadow being all the things about ourselves that we wished wasn't true. If the eye is single, if the perception is undivided, then we become sort of lightness in being and transparent. One. And in today's verse, he finally just kind of says it plainly. He's like, look, nobody can serve two masters. And I don't want to contradict Jesus, but you kind of can serve two masters. I mean, I don't know how close of a look you've taken at your life, but I've noticed from examining my own life that I've been serving at least two masters for most of it. You get like we have a life in service of faith or devotion on the meditation retreat, and then there's a life in service of worry and fear at 2 a.m. We could speak like the language of trust over here, and then somehow not notice that we're also unconsciously trying to like control everything. These divided loyalties are subtle sometimes, and other times painfully obvious, maybe to everybody else in the room except for yourself. You can't serve two masters, which we could also say like the soul can't orbit two suns at the same time without experiencing volatile, violent, and unpredictable weather. That word that serve that Jesus uses there, like, I don't know if you hear serve and think like, like a volunteer opportunity where you sort of like punch in for a couple hours a week, feel a little bit better about yourself, go home. It's actually a term used almost explicitly to talk about like slavery. It is a term that means having one's choices and behaviors dictated by, monitored, and evaluated by something that isn't the self. It's a slavery term, and Jesus uses it here, I think, not to condone the terrible invention of human slavery, but to use a term referring to a brutal system to sort of like shock us awake to recognize that as much as the ego prizes self-sovereignty, sort of being its own thing, the level of sovereignty that the ego desires to attain to is ontologically impossible. It's like Bob Dylan said in his little run of evangelical records, you gotta serve somebody. So a quick word about the word ego. So ego originally, in its original conceptualization, it just meant I. Like, I am, I think, I feel, I am having this experience. It just means I, me. Like the locus of consciousness that is, all of reality is sort of appearing on the screen right there in front of this I, the ego. Now, Sigmund Freud changed the way that we use this word, and the way that he describes the ego, I think you can sort of picture the ego being like this, like underqualified middle manager who is stuck forever trying to broker these uneasy peace treaties between these competing forces within. There's the super ego, which is sort of the moral center of the person, and the super ego is forever trying to get the salacious and unrelenting demands of the id under control. Like the id is sort of like the animal instinct, it just wants and gets and takes and eats, good, and the super ego is the elevated moral self, which is also, almost religious and judgmental. It's the judging voice of like, oh, you're going to do that again? Right? And so in between these two polar opposite forces is the ego trying to just kind of keep it all together. And that's exhausting work. It's thankless and exhausting work. And on top of that, the ego, the mind, is sort of like a survival machine. It's been honed through untold millennia of evolution around this one principle, like keep this thing going, keep it alive. And yet somewhere in the back of the ego's mind is the inescapable knowledge that, I'm probably not going to get out of here alive. Like, it's the ultimate statistic, 1 and 1 die. And so it's like being given a job that you feel unqualified for, where the end goal is functionally impossible. Like, it's like, of course it's exhausting. Rather than like kill your ego, that being such a popular phrase at the moment, I feel like it ought to be like, give your ego a break. Like, teach the ego to chill out and to relax and to receive. The word sin in the Greek, it's hamartia. Martia means a part of. Ha means not. So sin in the Greek, if you just break it down to its constituent parts, it means to feel not a part of the whole. And that is the true place of exhaustion for the ego. It's the illusion of separateness. It's this feeling that we've got to earn our way back to the center of something, earn our way back into a place of belonging. And that is actually what that word mammon is, that Jesus says in the translation we read. He says, no one can serve both God, life, and money, mammon. And mammon means accumulation. Mammon capitalizes on the ego's felt sense of deficiency by promising that with enough accumulation, the ego can finally become self-sovereign like it always wants to be. That if I finally get enough knowledge, if I finally get enough money or credentials or one more training course or one more relationship, one more, I will transcend my creatureliness and never again be dependent on the source or on my parents for help or on my wife's perspective or on anything. I'll be myself. I'll become self-sovereign, having accumulated enough. And that's what Mammon offers. Jesus seems to offer something very different. Not an escape from creatureliness, but like freedom from being ashamed of it. Maybe the best biblical correlate here would be the concept of manna. You might remember manna from the Exodus story, where for 400 years Israel has been crying out to the Lord for salvation, for freedom. They don't want to be slaves anymore. Finally, God sends the emancipator, Moses. He, through a series of escalating miracles, manages to break the will of the Pharaoh and destroy his army and lead the captive Israelites out into freedom. They're out, their first taste of freedom. They're like 45 minutes in the desert, and they're like, what are we going to eat out here? And Moses is like, I'm not really sure, have faith. And they're like, what? This guy doesn't even know what he's doing. And then some group is like, yeah, we ought to go back to Egypt, because at least in Egypt we had 3 square meals and clear expectations. What did you lead us out here into the desert to die? This is after 400 years of that. I think the message here, one of the many messages, is just like maybe that freedom is an acquired taste, and that our first taste of freedom can be quite frightening because we've been conditioned to doubt ourselves and trust the systems. And when we finally want liberation and freedom from the systems, we have to learn to trust ourselves, and that can be scary for a minute. So Moses, he goes to God and he's like, look, God, these people are going to kill me. What are we supposed to do? And God's like, chill out, don't worry about it. Watch the ground tomorrow. So Moses relays this message the next day as the dew is evaporating from the desert landscape. In the dew's place appears this mysterious substance that comes to be known as manna, which is a Hebrew word that translates directly to, what is this? So manna ought to be pronounced manna. It means, what is this? And here's the miracle and the lesson of manna. There was always exactly enough for everybody to get their fill, but never enough for anybody to go beyond full. Additionally, if you tried to store some manna up for tomorrow, because, you're just being pragmatic, who knows when this miracle is going to run up. If you try to store some up for tomorrow, it immediately rots. So manna was a physical object lesson for the Israelites to learn that what we need is here. And what we have is enough. And that stands in stark contrast to the message of Mammon, which says, you don't have quite enough, you need a little bit more. Does your insurance policy have an insurance policy on itself? Oh my gosh, your insurance isn't insured? Well, that's going to be a problem. Mammon says, acquire enough and you'll finally be free. Manna says, everything you need is actually already here. If you can just accept that, you'll be free. So, a quick word about freedom. Freedom, I don't believe, means I serve nothing. I serve nobody. I think that the part of us that wants to say that is our egoic nature. And the ego, as much as it doesn't want to admit it, it has to serve somebody. So freedom, it can't mean I serve nothing, I serve nobody. True freedom just means I choose my devotion consciously. This is Father Richard Rohr. He says, you're only free when you have nothing to protect and nothing that you need to prove or defend. Trapped people have to do what they think they want to do. Free people want to do what they know they have to do. The ego longs for self-sovereignty, but is perpetually bound to a master, even if that master is the illusion of self-sovereignty. The true master relieves us of the burden of having to self-generate a sense of sovereignty through relentless and exhausting effort. Okay, that's when Jesus says, "Are you tired? Are you burned out on religion? Just come to me. Learn to relax. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace." The wrong master keeps us thrashing around in the passions, drawn this way and that, ever chasing, lost in the accumulation game. Here's Mary Oliver. My work is loving the world. Here the sunflowers, there the hummingbird, equal seekers of sweetness. Here the quickening yeast, there the blue plums, here the clam deep in speckled sand. Are my boots old? Is my coat torn? Am I no longer young and still half perfect? Now, let me keep my mind on what matters, which is my work, which is mostly standing still and learning to be astonished. The phoebe, the delphinium, the sheep in the pasture, which is mostly rejoicing, since all the ingredients are here, which is gratitude, to be given a mind and a heart and these body clothes, a mouth to give shouts of joy, to the moth and the wren, to the sleepy dug-up clams, telling them all over and over how it is that we live forever. My work is loving the world. My work is learning to stand still and be astonished. Our work, even from just the ego's perspective, is not to become sovereign and complete or to be exiled and destroyed. The work is to become transparent so that my internal world and the world around me, my actions and behaviors, are congruent, so that there's just this one thing. And freedom is birthed from awareness. Awareness is where we can exercise choice. We don't need to become the light. Jesus started this talk by saying, "You are the light." The work is excavating the light that is already lit, eternally, perpetually. May we pay attention this week. May we gently and patiently tune in to our inner world and be aware of the thoughts, feelings, and actions as they materialize and arise and present themselves to us. And we can just gently ask the question, what is this in service of? And then just wait a moment and listen and just go from there. It's like St. Augustine wrote all those years ago. He said, love God, and then just do whatever you please. Amen. Well, thank you for being here. Thanks for tuning in. This coming Sunday, which is August the 16th, I believe, we'll be all together now at the Ribault Garden Club. Oh, here, let me check that date for you. Let me make sure I'm right here. Yes, August 16th, 2026. Ribault Garden Club, 10 a.m. Hope you can make it. Bring a pal. It's going to be good to be together with you. All right. Love you. Thanks for being here. Peace.